The roadside beggar is driving a Ferrari. The maid didn't come today. She owns a house now. The delivery guy declined your order. And by noon, the entire economy starts breaking. Because overnight, poverty is gone. And the moment nobody is poor, nobody is forced to say yes. And that's where this gets uncomfortable. Right now, over 600 million people globally live in extreme poverty. That's not just a statistic, that's a labor pool, a pricing mechanism, a pressure valve. If nobody is poor, nobody is desperate. And if nobody is desperate, a lot of jobs stop making sense. Who harvests crops for minimal pay? Who stitches fast fashion for a few dollars a day? Who cleans offices at midnight? Who delivers food in the rain? We don't notice these roles because they're priced low enough to stay invisible. Poverty doesn't just create hardship, it creates affordability. Now, imagine overnight everyone has enough money, not rich, just enough. Enough to say no. That one change rewrites everything. Because the global labor market isn't built on what work is worth, it's built on what people are willing to accept. And willingness changes fast when survival is no longer at stake. So what happens first? Wages don't gently rise, they spike violently. Jobs that paid $2 an hour suddenly need to pay $10, $20, maybe more. Not because the work changed, because the alternative did. People can walk away now, and millions do. Factories slow down. Agriculture struggles to find workers. Logistics networks, already fragile, start breaking in places no one expected. The cost of basic goods begins to climb, not gradually, relentlessly, because every product you buy is built on layers of cheap labor. Remove that layer and the entire cost structure shifts upward. This is where most explanations stop. Prices go up. But the real story is deeper, because prices don't just reflect cost, they reflect power. And when poverty disappears, power redistributes overnight. Workers gain leverage, employers lose it, and systems built over decades don't adapt overnight. Let's zoom in. Take something simple, a cup of coffee. Before, it cost you maybe a couple of dollars. Behind that price is a chain. Farmers growing beans, workers picking them, processors, transporters, retailers. At every stage, margins are kept low by one thing: someone, somewhere, willing to accept less. Remove poverty, and that chain tightens. Farmers demand fair prices. Laborers refuse underpaid harvesting. Transport costs rise as drivers demand more. Retailers raise prices to survive. That $2 coffee? Now it's $6 or $8 or more. Multiply that across everything: food, clothing, housing, services. You don't just get inflation, you get a structural reset of value. And here's the irony. The very people who escaped poverty are now part of the force driving prices higher, which means not poor doesn't automatically mean comfortable, because money is only meaningful relative to prices. If everyone has more, but everything costs more, have we solved poverty or just renamed it? This is where governments step in, or at least try to. They raise interest rates, they introduce price controls, they subsidize essential goods. Some experiment with universal basic income. But here's the problem. Most of these tools were designed for gradual change, not overnight transformation. You can't stabilize a system that just lost one of its core balancing mechanisms. And so cracks start appearing, small at first, then louder. Businesses that relied on ultra-low-cost labor begin to collapse, not all at once, but enough to matter. Supply chains shrink. Some industries automate faster than planned. Others simply disappear. And automation becomes the next domino. Because when labor gets expensive, machines suddenly make more sense. A factory that couldn't justify robots before now can. A restaurant that relied on cheap staff now experiments with self-service. A delivery network replaces riders with drones where possible. Efficiency increases, but employment changes. And here's where it gets subtle. The disappearance of poverty doesn't just raise the floor, it reshapes the middle. Jobs that existed only because labor was cheap vanish. New jobs appear, but not always fast enough and not always for the same people. So even without poverty in the traditional sense, instability creeps in, because income isn't just about survival, it's about structure, predictability, identity. Now zoom out further. Look at countries, not individuals. Developing economies that relied on cheap labor for exports suddenly lose their competitive edge. Manufacturing shifts, trade balances change, currencies fluctuate. Some nations benefit, others struggle to adapt. Global inequality doesn't disappear, it mutates. And then there's consumption. When hundreds of millions of people suddenly have spending power, demand explodes, not just for essentials, for everything. Phones, transport, energy, housing, and supply can't keep up instantly, so prices rise again. Resources get strained, infrastructure gets tested, and the system, once optimized for scarcity, struggles to handle abundance. This is the part nobody likes to say out loud. Poverty, as cruel as it is, has been quietly embedded into how we price, produce, and distribute things, not by design in a moral sense, but by evolution of the system. Remove it suddenly, and you don't just fix a problem, you expose dependencies, and dependencies don't disappear cleanly. They snap. Now, does that mean poverty is necessary? No, but it does mean eliminating it isn't as simple as flipping a switch. Because poverty isn't just a lack of money, it's tied to education gaps, healthcare access, infrastructure, opportunity. Remove the symptom overnight, and the underlying systems still need time to adjust. Otherwise, the imbalance shows up somewhere else, in prices, in jobs, in growth, in stability. And here's the quiet twist. In the long run, a world without poverty could be far more productive. Healthier populations, better education, higher innovation, stronger demand. But long run is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because getting there isn't smooth. It's disruptive, messy, sometimes chaotic. And humans don't like chaotic transitions. We like narratives, clean before and after stories. But economies don't move like that. They move like ecosystems. You remove one species and everything else reacts. Some adapt, some collapse, some evolve into something new. So back to that morning. No poverty, no hunger, no extreme inequality at the bottom. It sounds like the end of a problem, but it might actually be the beginning of a different one. Because the real question isn't, what if poverty disappeared overnight? It's this: if the system we built quietly depends on it, what would we have to rebuild to truly live without it?